Hello and welcome to the Dysfunction. I am Spencer, dopamine dysfunctional the most. Today I have a very special guest with me. We have Spaz, ADHD everything. The very first video I saw containing ADHD content on TikTok was Spaz, so I am very grateful that he could make it here. It feels like a full circle event for me, so thank you for coming on, Spaz. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Oh, you know I'd be here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get started, why don't you introduce the people for anybody who follows me and doesn't follow you? I don't know if there's a large disconnect there, but if in case there is anybody out there, why don't you go ahead and tell us any comorbidities before we get started?
Okay. Hi, I'm Spaz. My name's Tyler, but nobody calls me that. I've been called Spaz since like the late 90s because, I mean, reasons kind of goes without saying for the most part. Um, yeah, I'm on TikTok under ADHD everything, as well as YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. Have a Facebook that I keep forgetting about. Yeah, there's that.
Patreon.
Patreon. I do have a Patreon. Yep, that's right. Which reminds me, I need to finish up editing that last rave. I'm almost done, but there you go. Comorbidities. Okay, let me see. When I went back into, we'll touch on this, I'm sure. When I went back in to get my quote unquote re-diagnosis, they diagnosed me with depression. I have social anxiety. Um, and recently it looks like I'm also on the spectrum. So there's my new adventure.
Right. Yeah.
So
So that's
yay!
very recent.
All of
Yeah.
the all of the
Congratulations on that.
things.
Right. That's
Thank you. Thanks?
right.
Question
Well,
mark,
no,
I
I
guess.
mean, I think it's always great to find answers, right? You know, like once
I
you
know.
have that, that's a, I mean, it's a wonderful feeling, but you're right. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Oh, for sure. Oh, and anytime somebody says to me, they're like, "Oh, you helped me get a diagnosis," and I say, "Congratulations," and I think about it, and I'm like, "Did I mean that?"
Right.
I guess I did. Yeah, like
Right.
congrats in finding out, this is a thing. This is a
Right.
part of my life. This is part of who I am, etc.
I always
So yeah.
struggle when people tell me on TikTok they just got a recent diagnosis. You know, I always say, "Oh fuck, congratulations!" You know, because
Yeah.
it is that kind of
Yeah, I remember
well,
seeing your video on that actually, that
right,
you had some question about that. You're like, "I'm not quite sure what to say about this. Like, do I say congratulations? Do I
right.
say like, I'm sorry, like, welcome to the club?"
Right, exactly. Because on
I
one
always say
hand,
congrats, welcome to the squirrel gang,
right,
I
like, and
guess.
especially for people who have found this community, right? And when I think about community, like you're one of the first people that pop up, especially for me. Like I said, very first video I came across with any ADHD content in it was yours, right?
Hmm.
So when I think ADHD community, I like you're at the top of the pantheon pretty much, just because in the order of the way I found you, basically, right?
I hear
So
you.
so why don't you tell me a little bit about the community that you've kind of developed and become a part of here on
Oh
TikTok,
boy.
Twitch, online?
Oh wow. Yeah, yeah, that is actually a gigantic snowball for me. Because touching back on, you said I was the first one related that you saw. The first one related that I saw was Danny Donovan,
Oh yeah.
and then was Peter Hyphen, and then Hey Good. From there, Hey Good introduced me to Lee. Um, then it was Katiosaurus. There was she's not on very much late. DZ.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember her full username, but yeah, DZ was one that I saw a lot of. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed, right? And when I started putting out more and more and more videos, and then people were telling me that I can relate to this so much. That's kind of where I started to gain some traction and whatnot. And then I've been sitting on a Discord for a while. I've been sitting on it since just about 2 years, actually. Almost exactly 2 years ago, I made my Discord and I was sitting
Wow.
on it. I had a plan to do something with it, right? I didn't do anything with it for the longest time. And then I think it was the 10th of October when I hit 20,000 followers. I decided, fuck it, we're going to make this thing public and we're going to try and get everybody to come and hang,
Right.
right? Because at that time I was doing the live streams on TikTok, and we were having a lot of fun with that. But then there was that whole, well, we're gonna fucking ban TikTok in the US bullshit, right? So I figured, okay, well, I've got a Twitch channel that I don't use a whole lot.
Right.
So why don't I incorporate that and then do the chats on Twitch and TikTok at the same time? And then that way, just in case it happens, then nobody's getting excluded.
Sure.
Then we can have, that was my idea. I can just dual platform because I can pay attention to both of them and bounce back and forth.
It's
Right?
impressive the way you do it, to be
Listen to me, an
honest.
ADHD guy saying he can pay attention.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, and that's where it kind of all began. And then from there, 20,000 followers, I'm like, okay, fuck it. Let's make this Discord public. Let's try and have some fun with it. And then the community just
Right.
exploded over the course of the next year. Like we're sitting at 2,800 and some people in there
It's
now.
amazing.
And it boggles my mind. I cannot believe some days when I sit back and look at it and just the impact that it has on other people, like the people that are in there. I continually say I praise the mods, not just the mods that are in the stream that are helping me out in the streams, but the mods in the Discord because they're the ones who help keep everything together.
Oh, yeah.
And if it wasn't for them, the community would not be what it is, right? Because you have to have somebody that's kind of making sure that people aren't being a dick or, breaking the rules or, harassing others, etc., etc. But the mods in there are fucking fantastic. Like I
Phenomenal.
swear by that.
We
I
had
swear
Shust
by
on
that.
the last episode, and
Yep.
we were talking about the squirrel station. For those who don't know, um, very delicate is the way that I would handle, or the way I'd say, like, you guys manage situations over there. I have my own personal server
to.
called the Dysfunction, where I just boot people for any reason, right? But you guys are very sensitive to all neurodivergencies, and I really like the way that you approach things because it seems like when any kind of issue kind of arises in that community, the first thing you guys do is take a step back and try to look at it through everybody's perspective, right? And
We try to, yeah.
I got a little bit of a firsthand kind of view of that on the back end when you were helping me set up this stream, right? Like just the way that you guys are constantly thinking about, like, not only the people involved, but the way the neurodivergencies between everybody kind of interact, right? Because it's a very unique community that we have, right? Everybody's individual. It's a spectrum, like across the board, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot going on. You're right. The mods are terrific at handling that. How do you go about kind of managing so much, so many people, so many issues, so much going on, and like your personal life, the whole shebang? Like, how are you pulling it off, right? Because I look at what I'm doing
Short answer is I
and I'm
don't.
like, oh, right?
The short answer is I don't. But first, I want to touch on that you said it's a unique community. Yeah, it is. There are a lot of creators that have their own Discords and they set them up like a fan club. And ours is not a fan club, right?
Right.
From day one, we wanted to make absolutely sure this is not a come and hang out and look at me. I'm a great big celebrity. You must bow down to me and praise me. No, it's not
Right.
like that in any way, right? Like I get in there and I interact with everybody when I have the time to. I haven't had a whole lot of time as of late, but I'm some other guy. That's it.
Right.
I'm just some other guy, right? So I'm in there and I'm interacting with everybody from the teens that we have in there, right? The kids, the littles that we have, to everybody else. It doesn't matter. But we treat it like it is a mental health community. It's not a
Right.
fan club.
Right.
Yes, I'm there. Yes, it's part of what I do for my quote unquote business, being Twitch and my merch and shit like that. But I mean, everybody has input on that and they can tell me, hey, we like this, we want you to do
Right.
that. But for handling everything, short answer, I don't. Honestly, like I said, I praise the shit out of the mods because they're the ones who are really the backbone of the place.
Right.
And when I've got so much going on and I can't devote my attention to the Discord, they're the ones who keep everything together. And Shust is a major staple in that. Major staple. Shust and Nate, the guy that I originally set the place up with, those two are what we call our station managers. So like they handle all of that stuff. like on the top end when they need to. Other than that, the mods run everything.
Right.
They're the ones who make sure that shit is running right, make sure that if there are any problems, they're the ones who are talking to people. We have people sometimes they'll go into what we call a panic room if they're having like a
Right.
panic of the moment, and there's usually a mod there to help talk them. And we're adamant about telling them we're not professionals, we're not therapists, we're not anything like that, but we can listen.
Right.
Any advice we give you is, from our life experience. Take it with a bag of salt, but there's that.
Right, and that's one thing that I think is so unique about your approach, right? Like, you guys aren't like the doctors setting up all of this and planning this whole community, right? Like, you were people from a community that saw a need, right? And I
Yep.
feel it too. Like, on TikTok, I always say TikTok's great because it's one to a lot of people, right? So you can get a
Hmm.
message out, but when you're trying to get a message back, it doesn't work very well, right? Especially when you have 1,000
Not
people trying
always,
to
no.
send you a message back, right? So like I always try to engage people in different ways, and that's what's so
Mhm.
fantastic about Discord in general, but like the community that you built is it's not just focused around neurodivergencies; it's focused around like interests, right? And that's where the way
Mhm.
you have the channel broke out. And that's how
Yep.
people find each other on there. It's not just like, hey, we all have ADHD in this section, let's get along. It's no,
Yep.
let's share, things about crafting and knitting or movies and whatever. And that's where those connections are made. And I think that's what makes the bond in that server so strong.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you give 1,000 neurodivergents the ability to tell you what kind of things they like, right?
Right.
Because we did, Moose and I, because Moose is like old school. Moose joined us like right back at the beginning, right? So him and I have joked about this many times, right? I was back there when there was only like 25 people and there were like 10 channels,
Right.
and that's it. And then the next thing you know, somebody's like, "Hey, we should have a channel about, gaming. We should have a channel about books. We should have a channel about this, that." And then from there, it just kind of fucking went psychotic. And then we ended up having to do like a big revamp of all the channels because shit was getting all over the place, right? It was a doom Discord
Right.
at one point.
Oh.
Nobody could find anything, right? Now we have like, including all the mod stuff, the admin stuff. There's 240, like 250 channels or something,
Yeah, it's
and
massive, massive.
yeah, but most people don't see a lot of them,
Right.
right? It's
Well,
depending on
you
like
guys
what
have done a
department.
great job of kind of filtering that through, so people aren't just kind of overwhelmed with all of that. And that's
Yeah.
another step that I was talking about, like that white glove service that you guys are gonna try to take into account everybody's emotions, everybody's inputs,
Hmm.
everybody's processes, which super
We try.
impressive. Like it's really really impressive. Like I am trying to emphasize this, and I'm just not doing a very good job of this. Like you don't understand how like 3,000 people with neurodivergencies all communicating together, like and keeping that running smoothly is something beyond like I can even grasp. To be honest with you,
Me too. The first days.
right?
That's why I got the mod team, man. That's why I'm forever praising them because they do like such amazing work. They really do.
Right.
I cannot say enough good about them.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Let's switch gears a little bit because usually I start with the diagnosis journey, but I felt with you it's probably good to start with community, right? Community first seems to be something you focus on, right? So let's dive
Very
in
much so.
a little bit into Tyler Spaz, okay? Tell me about your diagnosis journey. Were you diagnosed young, old, fairly recently?
Okay, up until recently, because I do not remember a whole lot of my childhood because trauma. But yeah, I know how many can relate to that. Um, as far as I had understood and I had known for the longest time, I felt it was like 2000, 2001. I was like 21 years old, and I didn't feel like shit was working right, right? So you know that feeling, right? Like shit's just not lining
Right?
up, right? So you go see a doctor and whatnot, and they first diagnosed me with depression, and they put me on Effexor, and that took my entire emotional spectrum
Yep.
and turned it into a boring piece of toast,
Yep.
essentially.
I was placed on the same thing for the same reasons,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh. It did not work well for me, so I ended up getting off of that after like 2 weeks, but it took like another month to overcome all of the
Oh yeah,
withdrawal and all
yeah. The
that shit.
withdrawal symptoms
Like,
of those is outrageous,
oh,
ridiculous.
they're just ridiculous. I know some people. I think Chris, one of our mods, I think Chris said she was on Effectra. I could be wrong, and it works well for her, and that's great. Any medication, if it works great for you, good.
Absolutely.
That one did not work for me. So I went in, I talked to him again, and it was one of the general practitioners, and he's like, "Oh, it looks like you've got ADHD by the looks of it. So we're going to give you this Ritalin and send you on your way. Piss off, have a great life." That was
Right.
it. No information, no nothing. I didn't get a pamphlet, a pat on the head, fuck all. I
Right.
got nothing. I got sent out the door. So for the next 20 years, here's me thinking, you're lazy, you're forgetful, you're a bit hyperactive at times, and that's it. That's all I knew. I knew
Right.
nothing else about this disorder the dude just handed me. And it wasn't until social media where I actually learned and I came across Danny Donovan and I can't remember what the video was, but I looked at it and I'm like, that is my fucking life being displayed right there.
Right.
What the hell,
I
right?
know the feel. I was doing that watching you.
Yeah. Here's my life on display for everybody else. And from there it just kind of it snowballed. It really did. It was like deep dive into this person, this person, this person. Then, when Peter Hyphen there was one he did, one of his old school ones. And I related to it in such a deep way that I felt exposed.
Yeah.
I like, when people are always accusing me of calling them out, you have no idea, right? When you don't understand anything about this disorder, and then some guy pegs you note for note for note in a fucking 50-second video.
Yeah.
I felt exposed to the world right then. So, and then I went back to a new shrink, or not a shrink, a psychologist, and talked to him. I got re-diagnosed at 43. He put me
Wow.
on a different med. It was okay. Bad side effects, vertigo. I didn't like that, so he ended up putting me over to Vyvanse, which I've been on for about a year and some. But as of late, with this new branch of my journey that I'm on, I've been talking a lot to my sister because my mom died 7 years ago. 7 years? Yeah, 7 years ago this year.
I'm sorry.
So I can't ask her all of these questions. My sister is the only one who, because I don't remember my childhood, she remembers all the details, right? So I ask her, and she's like, "You know that you were diagnosed at 7, right?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"I fucking what?"
Right.
So apparently, I've been diagnosed since I was 7 and didn't know it.
Wow.
Whoopsie!
Right. Yeah. And just slip them. That's. I mean, that's terrible. Right. But we've talked before on this subject, so I'm trying to not kind of summarize too quickly. Tell me a little bit about the difference between what you're learning here on TikTok and what you were given. I know you said the doctor didn't tell you anything, right, for 20 years, but what did you know about ADHD prior to TikTok is I guess what the question I'm asking, because for me I knew very little, and most of what I knew stemmed from the Ritalin pandemic that they were talking about in the 90s, right? And I didn't know much besides that. Did you have a deeper understanding of ADHD than that?
Not really. I was on a very similar page to what you were on. All I knew was the dude had handed me a bottle of Ritalin, and I didn't even know until years later about how much Ritalin was overprescribed back in the 90s, back in the big Ritalin explosion, and yeah, I knew literally nothing, right? If you compare the information even that we had access to now versus what we knew back then, it's a world of difference. And I mean, we still have so far to go,
Right.
still at this point. But I mean, compare the two from then to now. Back then, the information that was publicly accessible or easily accessible by Joe Blow me in my fucking early 20s was damn near non-existent. I
Right.
felt like, right? And of course, you're handed this diagnosis, and your head is just swimming basically in this information. It's like, sorry, I've got what? What is, huh?
Right.
Like, I don't get it. So yeah, when I say I literally thought I was just lazy, I was forgetful, and I was sometimes bouncy. That's literally all I knew about it. I
Right.
knew nothing else.
Right. And I appreciate that perspective from you because I have people ask me all the time, like, don't you wish you could go back and change things? And because I've talked to you about this, I'm under the firm belief that had I gone back, the same thing would have happened. Where maybe I've been prescribed meds, but I wouldn't have the knowledge, I wouldn't have the understanding of my
Hmm.
brain and how it works, and that's what you need. Like
Yeah.
we're trying to put a band-aid over a major issue here, with a medication and a kick out the door, right? But
Yeah,
the work is on the other end.
it
Like
is. It
the
really is.
emotional dysregulation and dealing through that and dealing with that and like dealing with object permanence and emotional permanence is like all of those things
And
can't be
people
cured
permanence.
with medicine. You know what I mean? Like there's no cure for any of this. And
Yeah.
I always say, like, I don't like the attention part of ADHD because I feel like the attention is the last of my troubles. Right? There's so
Oh
many
yeah, no,
other
it's not. It's
things.
not a deficit
Right.
in attention. It's a deficit in the ability to control the
Of
attention.
course. Right.
But that's the difference. Yeah, but you're right. Like, it's a case of going back. If I knew then what I knew now, right? If I had even like a fucking an iota
Right.
of what I knew now back then, I feel like I would have been able to survive better and not survive but thrive better in my life back then,
Yeah.
right? Like I would be able to, like, I can look back over relationships I've had with people and family members and stuff like that, and I can just put little pieces on and go, yep, yep, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yep, that makes sense. So yep, that's why that didn't work out. Yep, that's why I lost that job. Yep, that's
Yeah.
why, and then too with the new adventure, and that's even filling in more plot holes,
Right.
right? So it's like, holy fuck sticks. I can't.
I can't even imagine. Like, since you brought it up, let's talk about that a little bit. Can you tell me uh, what kind of brought on like your suspicions of an autism diagnosis?
It was actually a friend of my wife. And we have a friend who has a 23-year-old daughter who is incredibly high support, like does not speak properly. Like, if, I think intellectually somewhere around 5 years old,
Hmm.
something like that, like incredibly high support. She will never live on her own, right? But her mother, who is also very heavily ADHD, like a hard combined, um, she has obviously experience with this, dealing with this child for 22, 23 years,
Sure.
22 years at the time. And she had pointed a few things out, I think to my wife. And so I asked her about it after the fact. I'm like, do you think that I have a couple traits of this? And she listed off a handful of things. She's like, yeah, you do this, 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 and you do this. And I went, I do. You're right. I do. And initially, I didn't pay it too much mind because I knew that there was a lot of. I hesitate to say overlap, but
Right.
there's a lot of parallel,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Very
So I didn't.
similar symptom presenting wise, right?
Yeah. So I didn't think a whole lot about that. But then after a bit and thinking a bit more about it and listening to, of course, going back to community, with my community, we have like a giant amount of all sorts of neurodivergent. So we've got a whole bunch of autistics in there, right? So
Yep.
listening to their stories, their experiences, and comparing their experience against my life, against how I react to things, how I interact with the world, and watching all of these little things pop up and kind of go, there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that.
Right.
So, and then of course with all of the other creators who have got a dual diagnosis and stuff, and then you've got, a handful of actual medical professionals that are on the platform, and just, I think one of the biggest ones that set off the biggest red flag was Leslie put up a video about, I think she called it Autism 101,
Hmm.
or Adult Autism 101 or something like that, and she had this whole list of things in there, and I looked at every item on the list as it's again calling me out and exposing me to the world.
Right. I was just about to
And
say.
I think that was the final nail for me. It was just like, okay, this is something you need to look at seriously now.
Right.
So from there, I did a deep dive on on like the DSM. I went and hit up Google Scholar. I tried to find as much as I could because you think ADHD is a spectrum. Holy
Right.
fuck.
Right.
So I'm looking at all of this and listening more to the voices of the autistic creators and hearing their experiences and comparing notes there. From there, I went to, because we had, that poorly named Aspie quiz. We had that kind of tear through the Discord one day, and a lot of people were looking at that, and they're, taking that and showing off their little scores. And
Right.
I did it once back then, didn't think anything about it. But of course, now I'm like, okay, let's look at this again
Right.
and
Roll
pay
that
attention
back.
to what you're actually saying. Roll back the tape.
Right.
So of course I took two of those, two spectrum tests. I went and took the RADSAR, I took the AQ, I took the CAT-Q, I took I can't remember the name of the other one, right? But of course I'm looking at all the scores on this, and when the needle is burying deep in the red, I understand these are just online things, and some of them are not necessarily diagnostic tools. Some of them are still used.
Right.
But when you're looking at them, and yes, it's online, so take it with a bag of salt. But I mean, then when it's burying you in the red that deep, you're like,
Right.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
So
it's
I reached out
at
to
least
a
an
couple of my
indicator,
professional
right?
mutuals. Yeah. Like it'll give you kind of a ballpark
Right.
idea. So I reached out to a couple of mutual professionals that I have on TikTok that are actually like clinicians, diagnosticians. I reached out to them, and I, obviously didn't say, "Hey, can I get a diagnosis?" I'm like, as a friend, can I give you this information and just get you to give me some feedback?
Right.
What do you think? Where should I go from here? And then that's when they're like, this is, and every one of them came back with, you should look into this.
Right.
I went, okay. So I took it to my psych, and he looked at I wrote down all of the notes. I wrote down everything, every symptom that I could think of that I struggle with, every social cue that I have issues with, all of the things our friend told me, all of the scores on these tests, and I compiled all this information. I brought it into my psych. He looked at the top page for I shit you not, looked at it and went, social anxiety, and put it down. And I'm like, spoiler alert, fucker, I've already got that.
Right.
But all of this is not social anxiety.
Right.
But the fact that he just looked at it for all of like 2 seconds and put it down, I'm like, nope, this ain't gonna do. So I went back to my family doctor. I'm like, he just fucking dismissed all of this. Find me somebody else. So
Right.
now I'm on a 6-year wait list.
Right.
But I did hear back from the director of the hospital that I'm on the wait list for, which is like Alberta's primary adult and child autism assessment place. When I talked to him, he heads up the adolescent and child diagnosis and helps with the adult diagnosis part. So
Okay.
he's the director of that. I spoke to him, and he said, I'm so sorry that you're on a 6-year wait list. Here are the phone numbers that you can call to bitch about that, basically. And I said, at this point, I'm self-diagnosed. He said, nope, that's valid. I would totally
Right.
do the same thing in your spot. He said,
There's
run with
there's
that.
no choice,
Okay.
right? What are you gonna
Yeah.
do? 6 years, right? Six,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I don't think people really grasp, right? And the United States has its own medical issues, right? And just awful. But it's everywhere, right? And a lot of that has to do with some ableism just kind of built into society in general, right? A lot of it has to do with those people are kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't need to take care of them, right? Like, not a big deal. I feel like so many times we're just kind of like pushed to the sides, and we're meant to just kind of be ignored, right? Like, society for the most
Not just the
part
people in mental
functions
health.
without us, right? Or that's
Yeah.
kind of the perception, right? When
Yeah.
in reality,
No,
we're
but
looking
not
at
just the people in mental
neurodivergent
health.
numbers closer to 20 to 40% of the population.
A lot higher than people give it credit for,
Right.
because these people are pushed to the sides and ignored,
Exactly.
right? But of course, a lot of this information comes from, and thank God with the new text revision in the DSM, they're doing better, asterisk, better, but they still have a long way to go because a lot of this shit is based on the experiences of little white boys.
Exactly.
Right? It's like how many women, how many AFABs, how many female presenting are being ignored? How many in the BIPOC communities are being overlooked and ignored, right? White men are not the only population on the fucking planet, as much as some people want to believe that, as much as some people would like to take our entire world back to a place where white men were the only voice on the planet. It ain't like that.
No.
We don't need to regress 100 years.
Right. It always strikes me as weird is we have just now started looking at the effects of estrogen and ADHD together. Right? Like we just got to this point. You know, ADHD's been around and prevalent since the late 80s, early 90s, right? And now in the late 2010s, early 2020s, we're starting to research how the effect of estrogen in a female's body like affects the chemicals in their mind, the chemicals that they're taking, and how that might be different, and how they might need to change things to adjust for
and it's a
women.
Question that I get a reasonable amount. People are like, does this get better? Does it get worse? What can affect it? And I have to explain to people, like, you have to remember this is a spectrum, right? When I was a lot younger, I was a lot more combined presenting. Now I have a physical disability that kind of keeps me from being a lot more hyperactive and whatnot, but my presentation also shifted. So I'm a lot more inattentive nowadays. But when I tell them that this, can change over the course of your life, but it can also change month to month, it can change day to day, it can change hour to hour based on the environment that you're in, based on the hormones in your body.
Yes.
Right? Because this is now becoming a lot more prevalent a conversation, right? Female presenting and AFABs and women, they have to understand that during that wonderful week that they have to endure, the hormones in their body are going to affect it. Their symptoms may present a hell of a lot worse than they do for the rest of the month. So,
right. And
that's the thing.
You're exactly right. And even today, like you go online and most of the ADHD research that is out there and the how-to or helpful hacks or helpful tips, whatever, is all geared towards children, specifically little boys. Right. And it's more how to manage a person with ADHD than it is how to be a person with ADHD.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. How to fit in better. Essentially, here's the cliff notes of it.
Right.
Here's how you fit into this social situation better without making a fool of yourself. Strap that mask on and get the duct tape, bitch, because it's going on tight.
Exactly.
Fuck that.
Before we move on, I want to ask you, because something just popped in my head that I think is really interesting, and I want your opinion on it. You've gotten one diagnosis before you were a member of the community, and you've gotten a second diagnosis, or you've given yourself a second diagnosis after joining the community. What would you say the biggest difference? Obviously, you mentioned as you were talking, you talked to a bunch of people, and I understand the work that's involved with like a self-diagnosis. But how much difference did that add to your experience between the two?
A lot, a world of difference, a fucking plethora of difference. Like, and to jump onto to pile more onto what you just said. A self-diagnosis in our community is 100% valid, provided you put the work into it.
Yep.
Right? You don't just watch a video from Danny Donovan or Peter Hyphen and go, "Oh my God," or some of these fucking dancing idiots that are doing this shit.
Right.
Here are the top 5 3 signs that you have.
Right.
Yeah, but everybody
you
does
don't
that.
Drink water. Like shit.
Yeah. That's right, Toby. I don't. Fuck off. But the work. You have to put in the work. That's the thing, right? Like, you have to. Yes, you can say to yourself, I feel like I relate to this. I feel like a lot of the things that this person here, that Spencer is showing me on his, I relate to a lot of Spencer's videos. Okay, so what I need to do from here is I need to look into this more. I need to do the work for myself or ask questions. I need to reach
Yep.
out to people who know and understand and ask the questions, because otherwise you're tacking a label onto yourself that you have no, I don't want to say no right to, but you're adding a label onto yourself that is not necessary because you haven't done the research, you haven't done the
Right.
work, right? So I feel that that is probably one of the most important things that you can do is, and like I'm still learning about ADHD. I
Yep.
refuse to stop learning about it because anything,
I
people
love that.
put me on this ridiculous pedestal as this monarch of information, right? And I'm wrong sometimes.
Sure.
I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong. I welcome being corrected. If I am wrong, science does not give a fuck how I feel about that.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
This is science we're talking about. This
Right.
isn't just, some asshole with a spec machine diagnosing 92 different subtypes based on a
Right.
fucking brain scan.
Right.
This is science. Science doesn't care if I'm wrong. So if I'm wrong, I invite people to correct me on it. I have people that in my community that I go to religiously. If I don't know the answer to something, there are people that are in the medical health
Oh yeah.
profession, right? Like Cy, Lee has got a whole bunch of background, like, the two off the top of my head, right? Like
Just,
I go
I
to
mean,
these people
hold on.
and I
That
ask
was some
them.
quality name dropping. I just want to say those are some awesome people you just mentioned.
Yeah, they are. Fuck yeah, they are. These
Sorry
are
to
these are
interrupt.
amazing people, parts of my community, right? And
Yep.
if I don't know the answer, maybe they do. So I will ask them. But I welcome being corrected. Will, the Speed Geek, he's been part of my community forever. He's really busy, not able to come back a whole lot. But I mean, when he shows up, he fucking dropping bombs and facts like crazy, man.
Right.
And citation is in there, right? So you need to do the work.
Right.
It can be a pain in the ass.
Well,
but you
and
need to do the
I feel
work.
like that's the thing that people don't realize. When you hear self-diagnosis, you're thinking like an ankle sprain, right? Where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I think it might be torn, right? You wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't diagnose yourself with like a torn ACL, right? But it's not the same
No.
thing because the doctor can't do an X-ray of your brain, right? Like, or they can.
true.
It's not going to do shit, right?
On the other hand, is it really that different? Right? I think I sprained my ankle. Now, whether you
Right.
did or whether you didn't, maybe you don't go to the doctor.
I
Because
see where you're going with this.
in the case of the States, maybe I don't go to the doctor because it'll cost me X amount of dollars, blah, blah, blah. Up here in Canada, it ain't going to cost us shit. But you don't go to the doctor because you don't have the time, you don't have a way there, etc., right? But if you tell yourself, I think I sprained my ankle, and then treat yourself like you sprained your
I love
ankle
that.
in order for it to get better, you self-diagnosed yourself with a sprained ankle. Ergo, if you self-diagnose yourself with ADHD based on the facts that are presented to you, and you use the tips that I give, or that Spencer gives, or that Katie gives, or that Eric gives, and they help you increase your quality of life, your self-diagnosis is
Right.
fucking data. Fucking
I love
valid
it.
data
I love
spoken.
it. No, I couldn't agree with you
Whoa!
more. I love that perspective, right? I was going for the more kind of hidden disability side of it, right? Where,
Yeah.
right? I totally agree. That's squawking.
I don't know what that sound was, but I heard. Oh, it's my dog.
Oh no, I have that happen. Yeah, no, that I loved the way that you reframed that, and so many times, like that's the best thing about this community is I'm a very specific type learner, and it has to apply to my life for me to make that connection, right? And so when we get a bunch of people with neurodivergencies coming together, they only really talk about their own experience, right? Not
Yeah.
really, but you know what I mean. They have to share relatable stories and stuff like that, and that's what connects me. That's why I share my stories on TikTok, is I know there's going to be a
100%.
neurodivergent person out there who's going to go like, "Oh, hey, that looks like me," right?
Thing is, I didn't originally know that. That's the thing, right? Like when I first got on TikTok, it was because a friend of mine
Oh,
who
really?
I currently work
I
with
didn't
now.
know that.
Oh yeah, I got on TikTok because a friend of mine, when we were in lockdown, and we had cohort families, right? So we had a limited number of people that
Oh,
we
yeah.
were allowed to interact with.
Yeah.
This guy was one of them, and so we were literally having a couple of beers on the back deck, and he had a TikTok, and he had like 22 or something thousand followers. And he's like, no, at the time, I think he had 11,000 is what it was. And he's like, you should try this out. Ha ha ha. You know, whatever. I'm like, well, I mean, it's another place to share some goofy shit videos, but I thought this was a kid's app, right? So I'm looking at some of the stuff he's showing me. I'm like, I can do shit like that, right? So if you go all the way back and look at my very, very first video, it is literally a conversation between me and the ADHD brain talking about how I want a statue of myself. And it came up because I was out and about. I was in the parking lot of a Canadian Tire, and this guy had a statue of a buffalo in the back of his truck.
Okay.
And it was an immaculate statue. It was fantastic. It was well done.
Not something you see every day, or maybe you do in Canada. I don't know.
Well, it depends sometimes. But I mean, I saw this statue, and I'm like, I would love a statue. And it just kind of clicked. I'm like, I want that. Here's an idea. But I mean, what really clicked for me is the detail on the statue. Because I was looking at the back end of it, you could see the balls on the buffalo. And I'm like, that is some incredible detail work right there, right? So, and I kind of ran with that. And how did it go? Something like, I want a statue. Oh, yeah, I can do a statue. I'll do one for you so immaculate you can see the balls on it. And then I cut to a picture of the statue. And it just kind of went, that was my first video ever. That was my thought, was I could drop dumb shit like this.
I love that.
Right? Just me and the conversations that I have in my head. And then little did I know that there are so many other people that are like, I've had similar conversations. Maybe not about a buffalo's nutsack, but I mean, like, I've had similar conversations in that I see a statue and think to myself, I want a statue. And then you have a conversation in your head about having a fucking statue. Silly shit like this, right? I had no idea the impact that was going to have on people or how much people were going to relate to things that I go through on a daily basis. Right? I had no idea. Yeah. Like the amount of people that tell us that, I relate to you in so many ways.
Right.
It's insane.
Were you ADHD everything back then?
Mm-hmm.
So you started as ADHD everything?
Yep.
Okay.
I've never changed my name on the platform.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty fortuitous of you then. You gotta admit, that's a hell of a name grab you did there.
Well, it's funny because the community is the one who ended up calling me Squirrel Dad.
Right.
Right. I actually got that from them because so many people in the Discord ended up calling me Dad because I'm not a guy in my 20s. Right. I'm not some little white girl in a fucking bikini that's twerking kind of thing, right? Like, I think that benefits me more than anything when it comes to the discussion about this and the people being able to relate to it is because I'm just some dude, right? I'm some guy that apparently people can look at as like a father figure. Sorry about that. But I'm just some dude, right? I'm the guy down the street. I'm the guy next door. I'm just an average fucking Joe who happens to look like a dad, apparently looks like everybody's dad or something, or a friend of everybody's dad or whatever. But that's where it came from. They started calling me Dad. Right. And I'm like, okay, can I call you Dad? And I think that came from a video that I replied to Carl's ADHD adult.
Oh, yeah.
I did a reply to them back when we had 5,000 followers or something. And the discussion was about how kids coming out as gay and getting kicked out of their family and stuff like that, right? And so my response was, if you've ever been kicked out of your family because of your sexual orientation or any kind of a mental affliction, I'm your dad now.
Oh.
That was it. That's where it started.
Right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, good on you, man. Holy crap. See?
But it's bullshit.
I'm learning all kinds of stuff about you.
But it's bullshit that anybody can get kicked out of their family for something like that.
Right.
Why would you ever stop loving your child based on who they love?
Right.
That is the dumbest thing
I once
ever.
had somebody ask me, when my son was born, they were like, what if he grows up gay? I said, my job as a parent is to teach him how to love, not who to love. Like, why would I ever be concerned about that? Like, you know what I mean? It's I'm the last person to try to put any kind of societal pressures on anybody else.
Yeah. I've got 3 kids. 26, 23, and 9. My oldest is non-binary. Um, my middle is has got a world of mental issues of his own. But, you know, to my knowledge, straight kid. My youngest, at 9 years old, says she's non-binary and goes by she, they.
Yeah.
Okay. Who am
Right.
I to judge?
Exactly.
It is not my job to tell you, as you put it, it's not my job to tell you who to love. It's to tell you how to love. It. My job as a parent is to make you the best possible person that you can be,
Right.
the most compassionate person that you can be. How to exist in this world that is full of hatred and division and terrible people and horrible things, and to exist in that being this amazing light of a human being that you are, and hope to whatever I believe in that you can make a positive impact, if not on the world, at least on the people around you.
Right. Right.
That's what I want.
Beautifully put. What
All
I
of my
mean, seriously, that's what it's about, right? Like,
I believe so.
I don't think there's anything I could add to what you just said that would bring more value to it. I think that was perfectly stated.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about how you kind of incorporate your family into your lifestyle, because like this is what you do, right? Like your full-time content creation, or at least
Yeah,
mostly
part-time.
full-time, yeah. But you're doing this for hours and hours and hours on end, right? And I really like the fact that, one, you're not afraid to talk about your family life, and two, not afraid to include your family in a lot of the things you do. So what kind of brought that about, especially talking about your daughter and her journey through an ADHD diagnosis?
I think once I hit a certain point, and I couldn't pin a number on that, but I think it dawned on me once I hit a certain point, and I felt that people were relating to me enough, and they were coming to me with enough questions and asking me like I was some kind of authority on the matter. Which, again, for anybody paying attention, I am no authority. I'm just some guy.
Right.
Remember,
Same here.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. I'm a doofus with a platform, and that's it. I try and do my homework, and I'm open to being corrected if I'm wrong. Anyway,
Somebody
once I
clip
hit
that,
point,
please.
though-
Can we clip that, please?
Go ahead, I say it enough. Knock yourself out.
I just like the sound. Like
but what-
I'm gonna use that for future episodes. You know what I mean?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Anything that I say can and will be used against me. I know that. Use it for good. Use my voice for good. But yeah, once I hit that point where people were looking to me and asking me all of these questions, that's where I kind of decided that I was going to do my absolute best to be as transparent as I possibly could. Because if you're going to look at me like I have some kind of, I don't want to say authority again, but I have some kind of value to bring to your life, I want it to be as authentic as I possibly can.
Yes.
Right. So, and especially with my youngest, I felt like that was something that was important to share, because with myself as a diagnosed, with my wife as an undiagnosed, I figured when we were getting her diagnosis, I kind of wanted everybody to see what that process looked like for us.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
admittedly, we're in a bit of a place of privilege in that regard, in that we went into the pediatrician and he diagnosed her inside of an hour.
Oh,
Done.
wow,
Right?
yeah.
So because he just looked at her and he's like, she checks all the boxes.
Right.
But I know and accept and will openly state, I'm well aware that I am in a spot of privilege, right? I know that. I am still going to fight and speak up for the people that don't have that same thing. But I wanted to share our journey and experience as we were going through it, right? So, and because I think it's important as a parent, like when you and I were talking
Yeah.
beforehand, and with us both being parents, neurodivergent parents,
Right.
I think that is a very important thing, because as you put back then, we are underrepresented,
Yep.
right? Clip that. That was Spencer who said that. But we are. You're not wrong, right? As neurodivergent parents, especially fathers, we are underrepresented, I think.
Right.
So I think sharing our experience and the kids' experience, provided the kids are okay with it. Jace
Right.
has always given me full reign to
And that's
talk about
where
whatever.
I think it's so interesting, the relationship that you guys have, because sometimes, it will be, months before we get an update, and I know a lot of that has to do with the communication that you guys have with each other, where it's not just like, hey, come smile and dance in front of the camera for me for views, right? You know what I mean? It's not that type of interaction, and it's exactly what you're saying. For parents, I don't think people understand that there's a lack of access to that type of information, to that type of content. A lot of it has to do with protecting your kids and setting those boundaries, which is super helpful or healthy. And I encourage everybody to do that, especially if you're a content creator. But do that with anything you post about your kids online. But that insight can be so helpful in getting future kids diagnosed and helping people
Yeah.
through that process. How do you balance that, right? Because there is some drawbacks from opening yourselves up like that.
It's true, there are, and I've taken some shit for it.
Yeah.
I put a video up on YouTube about it was the rainbow unicorn mermaid video actually on YouTube that I took a lot of shit for that. There was some people in there. They're like, "Oh my God, you're exploiting your children." I'm like, "Well, actually, Jasa has wanted to be a content creator and wanted the spotlight since she was 5 years old."
Right.
Right? She has her own little YouTube channel, which she doesn't do a whole lot on. But I mean, like, she used to play Roblox and put
Yeah.
videos up on Roblox and stuff like that. And she's always been very much the star of the show,
Right.
right? But I mean, like, we do that within reason. Like, if I'm doing a stream, I'm streaming on Twitch, and she'll come home from school, right? Like she just did, what, half an hour ago.
Uh-huh.
And you could probably hear her in the background, right? And I call it Rule Jasa, which is I pause everything and I make sure that I talk to her. I ask her how her day was, get a little bit of info out of her. Of course, my community, they all know her, right?
Right. Yep.
And they're all saying hi and everything like that. And I'll ask her, like, "Do you want to come say hi?" It's entirely up to her. If she doesn't feel like it, she doesn't have to, right? I'm not going to force the kid.
Yep.
But if she wants to come and say hi and just chat with the people, then great. That's entirely on her.
Right.
But yeah, she is always like, she's in dance classes, she's in singing classes, right? She's always been, we call her the showstopper, right? Because she always wanted to be that center of
I love
attention.
it.
But within reason, right? Like, if she doesn't want to come and talk to people, she doesn't need to. If she doesn't want to go out and play with these certain friends, we're not going to force her,
That's huge.
right? If she doesn't, if we have a family member who's coming over and she doesn't feel like interacting a whole lot other than saying hi and blah blah blah, and then she disappears down to her room and wants to play with her toys or on her phone or whatever, that's her prerogative. I'm not going to force her into a position that she doesn't want
That's
to be
awesome. I love
We love
that, and I have to know. Whoa.
in. Did you break anything?
I love it.
Even Spencer went, whoa.
So obviously you grew up without knowing any of this ADHD information, right?
Not a damn
And
thing.
now your daughter's in a position where not only is she going to know that information, she's going to have a parent that's going to be the primary educator of that information. One, I want to say how cool that fucking is, right? That's amazing, right? Like, I don't think she'll
Are
ever.
your kids neurodivergent?
They're too young to get tested, right? So we don't know. Like, my son just started school this year, so we need some history of school and stuff for any kind of diagnosis there. And my daughter's 2.5. But the way I approach it, what's
What
that?
do you, from your own observation, what do you think?
It's hard, because you hear it all the time, like, oh, I do that too, right? That's not ADHD. I do,
Yeah, they're just kids.
right. And so trying to like parse that out. One, I just kind of want to let them be kids and not try to look at them over and analytically,
Yeah.
because I don't. One, there's nothing I can really do about it,
Hmm.
and two,
I'll disagree with you.
right. The thing that I do right now is I teach them about the way I think. Right.
Hmm.
I explain to them what's going on in my brain. I ask them about what's going on in their brain, and this is something that's I've started since my diagnosis, obviously. But I try to tell them how I view things, what things work for me. I try to give them like any helpful hints, everything I can about the way I think, and I try to verbalize what I'm thinking a lot. Because if they don't have ADHD and they're not neurodivergent, they're going to understand me a lot better, right? It's not going to hurt anything, right? All of these practices and stuff, they're not just beneficial for people with ADHD. I think they're
Yeah.
beneficial for everybody, right? So that's
So
kind of been the
you just fed
approach.
entirely into my disagreement.
Oh no.
You just explained exactly
Okay.
why
Oh,
I
all
was going to
right.
disagree with you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, so I try not to be too analytical, and a lot of what I want to do is make it just part of life, right? And I'm sure you can relate to that, where it's not
Mhm.
something that has to be constantly looked at and evaluated and speculated about, but it's just like, oh, hey, my dad does that too. This is what he does to get around it, right? And that's kind of what I want. So when we do get a chance to go through any kind of diagnosis process with them, like they should know what it's about and what any kind of
Yeah.
questions they should be able to self-identify way before we come to that point. Even at that age, they should be able to identify some symptoms, some markers, some traits that they have in common with me,
Mhm.
at least, right?
Yeah,
um,
and more than just everybody does that,
right
right?
right and so yeah, I want to know, one, like how beneficial do you think it is, uh, that you're the one that's delivering this information, um, versus like a doctor, or like your average parent who's not in the ADHD sphere and doesn't have the access that you've kind of built up. Um, like, how do you think that's kind of impacted? And two, how you go about explaining symptoms of ADHD to children.
Um, I feel like it is. I am certainly not going to put myself over and above any doctor that is out there, but I feel like as as her parent, I am the one who sees her every
Right.
day in and day out, right? One of the biggest gripes that I have with my psych and him just looking over shit and going, "Nope, that's social anxiety," and putting it down. You see me for 15 to 20 minutes every 4 to 8 weeks.
Right.
You have no fucking idea what I actually go through on a day-to-day basis, how I have to deal with these things on a day-to-day basis, and you are just going to pigeonhole me based on the fact that, well, you're not outwardly presenting. No, I'm a level 500 masker. Believe me, I'm
Right.
fucking good at this.
Right.
When it comes to my kid, I see her every day.
Hmm.
I see her how many hours in a day, right? I see the highs, I see the lows. So I feel like that, obviously, being a parent, that is going to give you a far better advantage when it comes to
Yeah.
this. Now, especially if you
Yeah.
have the good information behind you, like, and you do it as well as I do. You know where the good information is versus where the misinformation
Yeah.
is, right? So it's important that we have that good information to fall back on versus like with any other parent who doesn't understand neurodivergency or ADHD in general. They are going to, if they do a quick Google search, who's not to say that they aren't going to come up with some fuckbag who is paying for an ad that happens to be on the top of the search that
Right.
says my supplements will cure you.
Well, what's the first thing that usually pops up when you search neurodivergent? Is what autism speaks is usually the first thing that pops up for
If you
me.
do it, yeah, you do a search for autism. Yeah, that's one of the first things that comes up, right? And that is among the worst information you can possibly get. But again, too, with ADHD, right? Come get my Be Mindful formula
Yeah.
of fucking kale juice and ground up twigs,
Right?
and that will cure you. Like, and parents, the ones who don't
Just
understand
eat
it, they
it
go
up.
flocking and they're fucking shelling out to this fucking dumbass who's giving you tap water and fucking strained peach cores,
Right.
for in a vial, right?
How
Like,
much of that do you think is internalized ableism, where people are out there trying to look for a cure for their children? So they
I think
want to
probably a
believe,
ton.
a lot of that. It's
It's very much so internalized ableism, but it's also incredibly fucking lazy. It's because they don't want to have to deal with the
right,
child, and
right,
that's a problem, right?
right.
Because my kid has, not even speaking on autism, speaking ADHD, because one of the biggest struggles that Jasa has is emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So if she has a hard day, right, or if she's not medicated on the days where she is the rainbow unicorn mermaid, we can tell, right, because she is all the fuck over the place. She is
Right,
bouncy, 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 boing, 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 boing. But then if something goes wrong, melt,
right.
right? She will have a fucking
Crash.
fit,
Yep.
right? So it's being able to understand how to deal with that, and the parents who don't want to have to put up with that, or the ones who don't want to have to deal with their child
Right.
info dumping. Okay, Jasa is huge for info dumping. The
Oh,
biggest,
not anything like her
cookie
dad at
run.
all.
No, not a clue, right? Not even a little. But like beyond me. Okay, like if I here's my shameless plug for the moment. If I broke out my spectrum graph, which I have designed, which is
Love it.
available on my Patreon for free, but
It's awesome, by the
on
way.
this, right? It's all of the traits and just like a little 1 to 5 kind of scale, because it can change day to day, right? Jasa would bury 3 to 5 on just about everything
Yeah.
easily, right? But her biggest obsession right now is this Cookie Run Kingdom game. Now, I'm sure if you're a parent out there, you may or may not have heard of it, right? She constantly is info dumping about not only the characters, but the characters she creates. Like, she is so creative.
Yeah.
She invents her own little characters. She's been doing this for years, right? She will create her own little OCs, original characters, for those who aren't up on the lingo. And she's constantly info dumping on these things, right? So the parents who don't have the patience to deal with that, those are the ones that I think are problematic. Those are the ones who are going to click on that top link
Yeah.
and get that little vial of bullshit for $50 and think that it's going to cure their child, something that there is no cure for.
Right.
And those are the ones I have a serious problem with, those parents.
Absolutely.
What was your second question? I feel like I just
I don't
touched on the
know. I feel like we're just kind of tearing through. No. I think you're absolutely right. While we're talking about information, let's dig into that a little bit. I don't want to shift away from the family because I like talking about. But while this is top of mind,
Mhm.
you are known, at least to me. I don't know if you're known to like a lot of people, but you are known to me for calling out a lot of misinformation online. Right? Like that's.
Absolutely.
I've actually reached out to you personally about some very disturbing crap online, right? And asked you to
Yeah.
just kind of address it because it's not something I'm capable of doing, right? So I want you to talk about that because you do not have a medical background, right?
Nope.
But you are out here finding the good information, reading, doing the research, doing the work to understand and be able to present the right stuff and combat the bullshit out there, right? How did
Mhm.
you, one, come about calling people out and calling out misinformation and being known for that guy, being that guy? And two, how did you do it without having the degree, the background in the field?
I think, what was the first case of it? The first instance of it was when I was still a wee little creator. I think I was like under 10K or something like that. And It was I had spoken about somebody asked me about what I was on, and I think I was on Ritalin at the yeah, I was on still on Ritalin at the time. And somebody asked me about that, and I just gave a little information on it, and even then I was like, okay, this is just how it affects me, right? Like this is just my experience, so don't take my word as gospel or anything. And then there was some other guy, and it ended up being like a thread of 5 or 6 reply videos that I ended up doing to this guy because he was talking about how this was based on his experience, right? He had a friend who got addicted to it. Well, this person probably shouldn't have been taking it to begin with, and he was probably using Adderall as like some kind of a party drug
Right.
or something. He probably wasn't a fucking neurodivergent. Um, George, I was born angry. That's true too, but that's trauma. That's a different story. But yeah, that's kind of where it started, right? Like I didn't like this guy's approach because I knew that there were other people that were commenting under him and kind of agreeing with him, and I'm like, but that's not the case, right?
Right.
That's in your case, right?
Right,
And
right. Yeah, don't
I think
apply that experience to everybody type of
yeah,
situation.
don't fucking broad stroke everybody with that, right? And I think from there it just kind of it died down for a bit, and then I think my first one was um I remember who it was. It was I'm not even gonna fucking give this guy the clout, but it was, and you'll know who I mean. It was a certain coach who has a bad habit of being toxically positive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pretty sure you know who I
Yeah.
mean. And the first video that he had put up on his TikTok, he got drugged by a good portion of the community, and I was like, I'm not fucking letting this go without saying my piece, right? So, and of course, it was at that point I was coming across a lot of the it's a superpower assholes and whatnot,
Yeah.
and I'm like, but it's not for me.
Right.
You don't speak for me,
Right.
right? And I was taking some issue with this
Well, not
because
only is it
it's not my
speaking
experience.
for you, it's also incredibly harmful for the people who
Yeah.
don't experience that, right?
And that's the thing is like by this point I had built up a reasonable following. Can't remember, we'll say 50K by that point or something. And this guy was speaking down to the people that in my comments section were telling me as I'm relating my struggles at this point, and they're relating to them and sharing their experience on their struggles. And then this fucking clown here pops up and is like, ADHD people, are you freaking
Are
kidding
you
me?
kidding
And
me
talking
right
about like,
now?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I know the
Sorry, I forgot the
video.
right now, yeah. But this fucking goof comes up and says this shit, right? And completely negates the experience of everybody that I have spoken to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, sir, this will not fucking do. Right? So, and then that's when I'm just like, that's where dad mode came about.
Right.
Um, and I just fucking shredded this guy. And that's kind of where it began was like, you
Yeah.
do not get to speak for the rest of us. So it's the ones who are buy my kale juice and twig berries. ADHD is a superpower, and you can't say anything about that. The ones who are sharing the super bad information, like there are 7 subtypes in my brain scan and blah blah
Right.
blah. Those assholes, you can cure autism. Those ones, yeah. After that first one there, I think it was enough people were kind of they came to me and they thanked me for being able and willing to speak up when they were unable
Yeah.
or when they have this
I've
little
sent you
tiny
that exact message before.
yeah, you have, that's right. But these people who've got 150 followers in 2 videos and they take issue with the fact that they are being fed this, well, it's just a superpower and you just need to try harder.
Right.
What is their voice going to contribute? They feel in their minds, what is my voice going to be able to contribute to the conversation? Right? They don't feel like they are going to impact anything. So when they send this to me and they're like, this is fucking harmful,
Right.
and I take issue with this, Yeah, I'm more than happy to step up to it. Have I taken some community guideline strikes for it? Yes, I have.
Yeah, more than
Do
a
I
few. Yeah.
oh, more than a couple? And do I care at the
No.
end of the day? No, because I am absolutely willing to speak up for the people who feel that they can't or unwilling to because they have lived with their neurodivergency in secret.
Right.
They have hid it from the people around them, and they don't want to be exposed. They don't want to have to deal with the all the stigma, all the misinformation, all of the ableism. They don't
Oh
want to have
yeah.
to deal. Whereas I got no problem with that. I've worked in some pretty tough bars over the course of 20 years. I got a thick fucking skin,
Right.
believe me. So any ass clown can sit there and call me names all they want. Doesn't faze me. I don't give a fuck about somebody calling me names, right? I am more than happy to do it. I'm willing to
Right.
do it. I will fucking put myself out there and do it
I think it's amazing.
because
It's
it's terrible information.
it's
You can't do
needed,
that.
right? I think people, when they see those type of videos, I don't think they understand, like, you have to fight back against that, right? Especially on TikTok, because like you said, smaller creators can do what they can to try to combat, misinformation. But it really doesn't mean shit until somebody with some clout comes in and tries to correct these people. And so many times, what happens is those people just double down, right? I
Hmm.
find that so interesting where you come in and you're like, hey, this is harmful information, this is inaccurate information, here's links to the good information, here's where you can find this. Like, I understand it happens, like, and usually, like, you try to reach out beforehand too. It's not like you're just doing these call outs off the cuff either, right? Like, there's
Sometimes.
right. It's required, though, is what I'm getting at, is because if you don't match their loudness, their level, their volume, then they're just going to ignore you and keep going,
Yeah.
and that video will stay there forever. And so
Yep.
many times, like, we see it all the time, millions of views on a video with misinformation in it,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah. There
incredibly
was one.
harmful.
There was one that one kid that I did a call out on. Now I didn't go hard on this kid. I actually was pretty good on him. But he was the one where he called ADHD autism light,
Oh,
right?
right, yeah.
So remember that one? So and he has like well over 1 million views on this, and he still will not take it down. Like Toby has called him out repeatedly for not taking it down. But I called him on it, right? And I did it with the left hand, the dad's guiding hand, instead of the right.
Right.
So, I called it. I spoke about, okay, let's talk about misinformation. This here is misinformation. This is not correct. By the way, this is ADD. This is not up to date information. So you are providing outdated information, and you were speaking incorrectly
Right.
about the relationship between autism and ADHD. Right. So I went gentle on him. He thanked me for that. He started following me after that. And then, you know, but he still didn't take the video down.
Right.
Right. If he doesn't want to, he's not going to. There was another guy that he stitched one of mine. I can't remember what the topic was, but I called him on it. Right. I did a video on him. And it was, again, it was not like full force. It was, okay, this is bad information. You are speaking from your own experience. You are negating other people's experiences by saying this. And he started following me
Right.
after thanking me for that, right? This most recent asshead that I have to deal with, not so much, right? I made the grievous error of fucking calling this guy out, and he has now tagged me and made videos about me in somewhere in the 15 range, 12 to 15 videos on me, only tagging me in a few, right?
Right.
What was the last one? He's like, I'm calling you out. You don't have autism. You're a narcissistic sociopath. I'm like,
Right.
you fucking kidding me?
Right.
Shut up.
Right. So I can't diagnose myself with autism, but you can diagnose me as that from a 60
That was
second
exactly
clip.
my thought too, right? I was gonna reply because he didn't tag me in that one, right? He alluded to it in one that he tagged me with, and I kind of looked and I found it, and I was gonna put in the comments, I was gonna be like, congrats on your doctorate.
Right.
Just
Right.
leave it at that. But then I'm like, no, that's just gonna give this fucking dummy more bait.
Right.
I don't need that.
I
But
always think it's yeah, the doubling down thing. I don't really understand, right? Like you have people that are reaching, and let's be clear here. When you reach out to these people, you're not the first or the only people to do. Like you've been sent videos, right? The amount of people
usually, yeah.
who send you these things is pretty
Mhm.
outrageous, right? Like I want to talk about how you manage all that too, but so usually you're kind of like invited into this, right? And you're kind of asked for help or asked for your opinion on this. Is there ever an issue where you're kind of like called and somebody thinks it's misinformation, it's actually really good information, and you're like actually have
Yes.
to fact check the people who are asking for the fact check?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had that a few times. Or somebody would tag me in a video on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And, they're like, what do you think of this? Right? In most cases, it's, what do you think of this?
Uh-huh.
In some cases, there have been people that have said, like, go get him. And I'm like, but for what?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was picturing when I asked the question. Yeah.
Like one of the most prevalent ones that I can think of is Dr. Russell Barkley. Okay, so if people don't know who Dr. Russell Barkley is, he's recently retired, but this guy is among the godfathers of ADHD
Right.
study and information and etc. And somebody, not somebody, I received, fuck, I don't know, half a dozen people sent me the
No,
video,
no.
and it was the one where he was talking about how time blindness works for us, right? How how ADHD is a now not now problem, right? We have a problem seeing into the future.
Yep.
I think is the way that he worded it, right? And how we can't get a good view of the future because everything for us is now and not now, right? So, and a bunch of people send me this. They're like, "Can you call this out?" I'm like, "No, no, I can't." Because for the majority of us, this is accurate, right? There
Right.
are two times that we have, a lot of us, now not everybody, as always, but there are two times that a lot of us have. I need to do this now. I don't need to do this now,
That's me.
right? That's me,
Right.
right? So, no, I can't call that out because one, hi, Lindsay,
Oh.
because one, it's good information, and two, it's Dr. Russell Barkley.
Right.
This guy is among the most noted for having good information, for good scientific study, right? Fuck that. I'm not calling that guy out. He's
Right.
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 Why would I want
Exactly.
to do that?
That had to be so awkward, right? And like, like, no, please just delete your comments, please. I don't want to be here right now.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to be here. Nope.
Let's so we talk about the
Yeah.
great about the community, and we just kind of touched on how like you're pinged in a bunch of these videos. Let's talk about some of the downsides of being connected into a community, because I feel like we'd be a little remiss, right? Because it is a lot of work. It takes a personal toll. I know you guys have a Rule Zero put in place for your kind of operation. So I want you to talk about that while you kind of answer this question too.
Sure. Okay. Then what was the question?
Oh, did I not ask it? No. So what kind of how do you manage the kind of expectations that people have on you, not only creating content but engaging with the community as often as you do? You're very deeply plugged in, but I understand that there's some times that it's too much. It's overwhelming. I take breaks all the time from making
Yeah.
content. But when you are kind of that important to people, to that kind of integral to the whole community that you built, how do you disconnect, especially when you're so ingrained into it, right?
I have a really, really hard time with that fact. It's something that I've only recently started to accept a little more, that a lot of people view me that way. And because like I said, mine is, it's not a fan club, right? And we're adamant about that.
Right.
Like when Nate and I built this, long term we were looking at, we want to make a mental health community for people that feel like they have nowhere else to go, right? So for me, it's it's something that I'm still I struggle with sometimes
Sure.
because and you've got the asshole brain, we all do, right? And it's I am not that important, right? I don't matter as much as
Right.
people think
That
that I do.
imposter
All
syndrome.
this
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
hard RSD, right? And it's funny too because for people who have imposter syndrome, if you look at the numbers and you're like, "Hey, I have this many people that are following me," and the number's just getting higher and higher, and you're like, I don't belong
Right,
here. I am
right.
such a fucking fake. Like, why are these
My
people listening
my
to me,
voice
right?
is it's all bots. It's just spam bots following you.
I gotta adopt that one. But but yeah, like I try and take it easier now. I try and accept it as best I can, right? But the thing about like the community that I built is I can't say enough good about them, right? Because
Right.
with Rule Zero, for anybody who doesn't know what Rule Zero is, real life comes first, always. By the way, I want to shout out to George, by the way. I saw a video that he did, and I know he's in the comments. Um,
George.
I saw a video that George did, and his comments were off, and that's fine. But he did one talking about Rule Zero, right? And actually, he promoted the Squirrel Station too. But I was like, yes, right? The amount of people that have incorporated that,
I know, right? It's so
it's
cool.
amazing to me because this was something that little history on Rule Zero. When Nate and I, again, Nate being the guy that I originally built Scroll Station with, this comes from back when we were playing Warcraft together and other online games with a whole great big community of people we had built there. Like community was important even back then, but
Yeah.
one of the major rules was real life comes first always, right? So if we had like a raid plan that night, but you couldn't do it because your kid had to go to dance class and you had to be there. Okay, fine,
Right.
right? Real life is always more important than some fucking video game. So that was it, right? That's where it came in. So we decided that when we created this, we when we started there were like two rules: no religion, no sorry, three rules: no religion, no politics, don't be an asshole.
Pretty simple.
We expand from there
You guys have gotten
because
really strict since then.
we kind of had to.
Just joking.
Unfortunately, growing pains. Um, when you get to almost 3,000 people, you'll see it. But always in there was real life comes first, right? That was it. And it was something that it was in there. It wasn't in the rules per se, but it was there, right? So if people were like apologizing for, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm sorry I've been absent. So
Right.
you're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your mental health, right? That is not a thing. And then Chaos, one of our mods, um, they came up with and they equated it to something. I don't know if it was a book where it came from or something like that, but they said to me, Rule Zero. We should put it in there as Rule Zero. I'm like, yes, the fuck we should.
Yeah.
So
Put it
that's
right at
where
the top.
that's where
Yeah.
the name actually came in. So right. So and then I did that video on it explaining what Rule Zero was and saying that that is something that needs to be implemented not just in our spaces but in all sorts of
Right.
spaces.
Right.
Right? Like school taking a mental health day, work taking a mental health day, things like that, right? That's places where Rule Zero needs to be implemented. That's a
Right.
place, like all of these places, they need this Rule Zero because not everybody can work like fucking slave to the grindstone for 50, 60, 80 hours in a week and still be expected to be at peak performance at all times, right? You're
Right.
gonna have a break point. Rule
Right.
Zero needs to come into play there.
I,
So
I love it for more than just work. Like I love it for relationships. Like people in the community have adopted it to not just like, hey, I need to spend time with family or I have to take care of this family thing. It's more like, hey, I just need to step away from everything, right? Like
yeah,
and it's not
that's
even
what it is.
right. Yeah, it's just like personal, unexplained. Like you don't need to explain it to anybody, right? It's just an assumed like, yeah, go do it. And that's one thing that I
Rule
love
Zero, I
about
need
it.
to take care of me.
Right, and you're right. It should be implemented workspaces, but like friendships, right? Like, oh,
Yep.
like I'm super busy at work. If I could take a rule zero on this friendship for 2 weeks and check in
Yep.
with you, then that would be amazing, right? Like, I'm a huge fan of rule zero. I want it everywhere. Like,
I would love that. But
right?
yeah, the amount of people actually, when Ron told me too, Ron had said that, or no, somebody had told me that when your guy this Neural Spicy Discord came up, somebody told me they're like, yeah, Ron and Lindsay had put in Rule Zero. I'm like, fucking A,
Yeah,
take it and go.
it's
Right? Like
important,
anything
right?
that I do, and I say it to everybody all the time about like all of the tips and tricks and hacks
Right.
that I use to make my life better. If anything that I say resonates with you and is going to help you better, take it and go.
Speaking
Right?
of, so
Run with it.
I've got the perfect example of that. If you go to the links in my bio, you can click ADHD resources. That link will actually take you to your links for the
That's
ADHD
right.
resources.
When you fucking put that video up, yeah, so I'm too lazy for this. So I'm gonna steal you. I howl, man. I'm like, do it, do it.
To this
That is
day, that it will still take you to your ADHD resources.
amazing.
But
Do it.
that's what it's
I'm
about,
happy to
right? Like,
share,
and,
man.
and that's
Yeah.
the thing that separates our community from the greater TikTok community in general is we have a mission to help each other, to improve each other, to share our knowledge, to share our information, because we understand how hard it is to be on the backside, totally blind, in the dark, no idea of what's going on, like how your brain
Exactly.
works, right? We
Well, like I
understand
was
that the
saying,
louder we are, the more people we can reach and impact, right?
you know, let that fucking cat out, please. Screamy McFuckface. But yeah, stepping back to what we were talking about with, not knowing anything about this diagnosis as you're growing up, kind of thing, right? Like I've been there,
Yeah.
you've been there, right? This is shit that we have had to go through and endure. We've had to put up with the hi screamy, put up with the not knowing how our brain works, not knowing why our brain works this way, having little to no support, being handed a bottle of pills and sent
Right.
out the door with no information, right? And having to learn all of that on our own. And I feel like, and maybe this is where I get more of the hi dad kind of thing, where I get the dad energy from, because one of the primary reasons that I do what I do is to make sure that Jasa knows and that she has all of the things that I never did,
Yeah.
right? I want to make absolutely sure
Yeah.
that she can grow up and understand herself better than I did when I was growing up, because now here's me putting all of the pieces together, right? I've been doing this for how many years now, and then now with the autism, now it's like, oh fuck, now I'm filling in even more
Right.
holes, right? I can understand this in retrospect, but I'm in my mid 40s. I'm 45 years old, right? I'm still going through a bit of, I don't want to say I'm going too much through the mourning period, but I still have those times where it's like, if I knew then what I knew now,
Yeah.
how much better off could I be? I don't want her to have to go through that. I don't want her to have to struggle in the same way
Right.
that I did, that you had to,
Well,
that so many of our friends have
life
had
is
to.
booby trapped, right? Like you don't even see the
There,
obstacles in
yeah,
the way, right?
because you don't know how to look for them.
Right.
But the amount of ableism that I've had to deal with, that you've had to deal with our entire lives, from people that just said, look at your report cards when you were
Right.
a kid, right? Would do so much better if only he applied
Right.
himself,
Just try
right?
harder.
Shit like that.
Right.
Yeah, just try harder.
Well, and
That kind of shit.
it still impacts me. I still catch myself telling my son that, and I'm like,
The amount
oh,
of
how
people
dare myself!
I've done it. I've been there, man. I've done it too. I said, as soon as the words fell out of my mouth, I was disgusted with myself. I'm like,
Right.
how the fuck could you let that fall out of your word hole?
Like, just
Oh my
try,
God,
please, just try. And it's like, ugh,
right?
I hate myself
I
for it.
still catch myself doing it, right?
Right.
I will tell her, okay, pay attention to me. What did I just say? What did I just say? Why? Why would I do that?
Right. Right.
And I'm like, I'm
It's
so
built
sorry. I
in.
didn't mean that. What-
We're hot wired
It is.
for it.
Yeah, because that's what we grew up with, and that is the shit that we had to hear and we had to endure and put up with, and we had to fight against our entire lives. We had no idea how to deal with it,
Right.
right? And now we're just learning. I'm we'll say 2 years in. I treat myself English. I treat myself like a later life diagnosis
I totally
because
understand why. Well, we
even though I've been diagnosed since 7, I still didn't have the information. I didn't have any of the tools, any resources, any help.
right.
So this is why I treat myself treat I can't say that word today. Treat
Treat
myself like
yourself.
a later life diagnosis. Yeah, treat yourself. But yeah, that's why I treat myself like that because I never had any of that. So I'm kind of putting it all together now.
Right.
But making sure that my kid has a much better upbringing in that regard than I did, that and doesn't have to deal with that level of ableism, that level of being pushed down because,
Right.
you know, having to feel like she's less than when she really is, in my opinion, more than,
Right.
right? So, yeah, that's that. I just remembered what your other question was about, like the community and the rule 0 and
Oh
how do I
yeah.
deal with that and being all busy and shit. I
Right.
did just
I knew it would come back around, right? Like
yeah, it did, yeah. How do I deal with that? Rule 0 is paramount. That is one of the things, right? When somebody calls rule 0, that's it. We don't have to ask a lot of questions. We don't feel the need to.
Right.
Rule 0 is rule 0. That is it. So if I need to, I step back. However, I remember I was touching on this. Our community is so amazing that they will encourage you and
Yeah.
support you in stepping back because they understand the exact same thing, right? Maybe not the same reasons. Maybe it's because I feel a lot of stress because I'm trying to do the content stuff. I'm trying to work on this, that,
Yeah.
the other thing, merch stuff. I'm trying to help, maintain the community, etc., etc. Maybe their experience is not the same as mine, and I get that. But they understand what it's like to feel pressures, to feel like they're starting to get to burnout. They're feeling that stress on them. And, if I'm bright enough and catch myself going, okay, I'm starting to get there. I need to take a step back, right?
Right.
Then they will support that. I remember once upon a time I was having a day and I did not want to stream. And the reason that I wasn't going to was because I felt like shit. And it's because of a conversation that you and I had. I felt like such an asshole because I put you in an awkward spot and you told me about it and I felt like a dick for it. And I sat there for 20 minutes before the stream and I thought to myself, I feel like an asshole. I feel like shit. I don't want to do this. But because, like I had said prior, I feel a responsibility to be as transparent as possible. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And I did it and I told everybody right out of the gate, look, I feel like an asshole. I'm having the bad brain day because I know everybody can relate to that. Right? I did it anyway. And the amount of support that we have in our communities that backing us
Yeah.
because they get it. They
Yep.
understand, right? I have days where I feel like an asshole too. I understand, right? They're the first ones to tell me personally. They're the first ones to tell me when I say that I'm getting stressed out to back off.
Right. Well,
They
and
are
yeah,
amazing.
you're right. They encourage it, right? And not only that, they'll also check, right, to make sure you're not just like in the zone, right? I get that all the time. When I was remodeling that basement, right? I'm
Yep,
doing a
I
jackhammer
remember
for
that.
16 hours straight. I had people checking on me that whole day, like, hey, don't burn yourself out, don't overdo it. Like, you're doing a lot. Are you sure you're okay? I should have listened maybe a little bit more, but I did have those people reaching out because you're right. They may not know exactly what I'm going through, but they understand that they've pushed themselves past that point, right? And they've had negative consequences and they care about you enough that they don't want that to happen to you,
Oh
right?
yeah, I have a dozen people that regularly check in with me, even when I am still somewhat frequent, and as
Right.
frequent as I can be lately. There are still a dozen people that will check in with me. Hey, wanted to make sure you're doing all right. How are you doing today? You know, you're awesome, you're amazing, blah blah blah. All of this stuff, and it is even if I don't get back to them right away, or I can't get back to them right away, or I just send back a heart or
Right.
something like that. my response to that is still an acknowledgement of and an appreciation of the fact that you are even keeping me in your thoughts enough to reach out and make sure that I'm doing all right. Right?
Well,
It is
just
it's
the
amazing.
consciousness alone is a valuable commodity in our community,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. Like the amount of friends, the amount of like close friends that I feel I have made in the past year, 2 years, ever since this journey started, is incredible. The people that I
Right,
get to interact with, the people that I get to talk to. I get to be here and chat with you for 2 hours
right,
and just be me, and you get to be you, and it's fucking awesome, right?
right,
The people that we like, fuck when Shoes and I came over and bombed you guys the other night, and you're just hanging out there, or whatever. We're like, hey, how you doing?
right.
Right? Shit like that. The amount of friendships and the people that you meet that understand you, that they have a same brain type as you do, right? They get all of the struggles and
Yep.
all of the ups and all of the downs. And it is beyond amazing. It is so fantastic. I cannot be grateful enough. I cannot overemphasize. There's a new word for the
I,
day.
I actually love that.
Overemphasize or overstate.
I love that. Yeah,
Take it
let's.
and go. Today we're going to overemphasize, but I can't express that enough. How incredible all of these people are, even when they're having a shit day,
Yeah,
and they show up in the stream, in the Discord, in your DMs, and they're just like, "I'm not doing well, but I hope you're doing okay." Right?
yeah.
Everybody, that they get it. Like
That's. I
like
don't want to
you
say
know,
trauma bonding, right? I don't want to call it trauma bonding, but we've been through some shit, and we've all been through real
yeah,
similar shit, so we
yeah,
understand how awful it can be, right? And I think,
yeah,
and I want your take on this because I think another
sure.
unique thing about our community, and it's something I say, is I'm always too busy judging myself to judge anybody else, right? like
I
we've spent
I
so,
agree
so
with you.
much time like worried about what other people are thinking of us that we actively don't look at other people with judgment or trying to like kind of pick them apart. You know what I mean?
I try my absolute hardest not to. I know that a lot of that is internalized ableism that I've grown up with, right? There are some
Yeah.
cases where your brain just kind of takes it and goes with it, and
Mm-hmm.
you catch yourself and you're like, no, no,
Oh,
no,
sure.
stop that, right? But yeah, I agree with that, right? Like in the same way that um, joking with your friends, and because all so many of us have got like self-deprecating humor that we
Oh,
run with,
you
right?
talk about. I've built
It's
a
not the
platform
it is
on it. What are you
I
talking
know, right?
about?
But that's the thing, right? It is not the greatest thing in the world, but we do it. So many of us do it. And in that regard, if I cannot make a joke about me, if I can't pick on myself, I've got no right to pick on anybody else,
Right.
right? So I kind of have the same mindset that way, right? I have no right to judge anybody else because I don't know their experience. I'm not
Right.
in their head. I don't know what they've gone through. I'm I'm not here to judge people,
Oh,
right? We try and make our community as no judgment as possible.
right.
Now, admittedly, some people are assholes and they're going to do it anyway, but we try not to because I don't know your experience. I know my experience. I don't know what you've gone through. I know what I've gone through. And the hardest thing that I have gone through in my life, my brain is going to attach to that, and that is the
Yep.
hardest thing I've gone through in my life.
Oh my gosh. Are
Maybe it's
you?
not the
Yeah.
maybe it's not the same thing that you have gone through. Okay, I tell this story quite often. There was a girl that I knew in high school. The hardest thing that she went through in her life, because she had a silver spoon upbringing, was daddy took away the car keys. In her mind, that was the hardest thing she'd ever gone through in her life. There was another friend I knew that was sexually assaulted.
Right.
That was the hardest thing that she went through in her life. But the brain doesn't care. Their brain equates that trauma
Exactly.
on the same level, right? So I have got no right to judge anybody for
Yep.
what they have gone through, because what I feel is the worst thing for me, they're going to feel like is the worst thing for them.
Right.
I got
Right.
no right.
Right. Oh, I love that, and you're exactly right. I've actually done videos on this exact topic, where, yeah, I think as at least the way I look at it, and obviously the way you look at it too, it's my best day is my best day, and if you tell me you're having your best day, I know what that is because I relate it to my best day, right?
Hmm.
And that's where I feel like a lot of empathy and compassion come into play with our community is we're not doing that comparison of, oh, my worst day is shittier than your worst day. It's, oh, you're having your worst day, I've had my worst day, that sucks.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
It's
It's
not an Olympic sport.
right.
It's not a pissing contest. Right.
Right.
That is it's something going back to that last ass clown who fucking was tagging me up in 900 videos. Gemini, I got to shout you out for this one. Gemini said in the chat as I was having the discussion about it, trauma is not an Olympic sport, and that is 100% correct. It is not a pissing contest. It's not a comparison.
Right.
It is not something that needs to be put on display for judgment and to compare notes on, right? What I have gone through that has caused me trauma is not the same that what you have gone through that is causing you trauma. You might be able to relate to it. Some of the experience might be the same, but it is not the exact same thing.
Right.
And my trauma is no more or less valid than yours.
Right.
And the people who look at it like it's some kind of a pissing contest or, well, my life was harder than yours. Harder is relative.
Yep. Exactly.
Difficulty is relative.
Exactly. Right. Oh,
Yeah.
totally. I love that perspective, and I love it so much because I agree with it 100%. So, like, I say the same thing.
All the better reason to love it.
Right. No, and I think it's so interesting. But you're exactly right. There's something special about the way that we talk as a community, and you're right. It's not, for the most part. There's always outliers. When we're sharing the hardest parts of our lives to everybody else, it's not for views. It's not, hey, look at me cry for likes and it's, hey, I've just realized this about me. I hope, at least for me, I hope this can help somebody else realize this about themselves.
I did a video on that a while back, and there was, of course, that one part of me in the back of my head, it's like, don't do this. But it was on a day where I was having the worst brain day that I have had in a long time. And so, yeah, I put the phone beside me, I just pushed record, and I just sat there playing with, like, I think I was playing with the cat or something like that, and just sat there, whatever. And when I put it up, the first thing I don't post this for sympathy. I post this for understanding. Right? I post this because many can understand, kind of thing. I'm not doing it for the views. I'm doing it to let people know that they are not alone, which has always been the one major thing that I have tried to push from the very beginning. Ever since I realized that so many people can relate to the experiences that I go through and tell me, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. No, you're not. You're not alone. Many of us go through this. Many of us understand what you're feeling right now because you're relating to this, right? There are so many of us, so many more than people understand or know about or any of that. You are not alone is probably one of the most powerful things I think somebody can say to a fellow neurodivergent that feels like they are struggling. Is while it doesn't help solve your problems, you're not the only one who has been there. You're not the only one who is there, right? We've all done it. We've all been there. It sucks. If you want, reach out to us. If you want a pat on the back, if you want an idea to maybe help, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you're not alone.
It's huge, right? I remember finding this community and coming across these videos on TikTok, and after realizing that these are symptoms of ADHD that I've been displaying my entire life, you really got to peel back the onion and realize with every instance of that symptom, I've piled on more toxic bullshit onto myself because of it. And I internalize that as something wrong with me. Whenever I don't quite fit in, whenever it's not quite right or something just falls apart, there's something wrong with me, right? And the minute I became not alone was the minute I joined this community and I realized that there's nothing wrong with me.
Nope.
My brain just functions differently. And there's a whole bunch of people out there who can help me, one, understand it, and two, work with it in a way that can benefit my life. Like, I look back, like, you're 2 years in, I'm 1 year in, coming up on 1 year in, and this last 12 months has been the most productive but most difficult 12 months of my entire life. It's just totally brutal. like I can't even summarize like the emotions that I feel. So like you're 2 years into this, right? Yeah, coming up, and so I want to ask, where do you see it going? Like are you just gonna ride it to the moon? Like
as best I can. I will try and advocate and speak for people to help people for as long as they want me to. Honestly, I will try and be here as best I can for as long as I can. As long as people want me to keep sharing my story, keep calling out bullshit, keep telling them they're not alone, keep sharing the experiences that so many of us have in relatable ways. Because even now, for the amount of times that I've done videos talking about RSD, and I still get people that comment when I say imposter syndrome RSD. This happened, I think, 3 or 4 days ago. I said it, and there was a comment in there. What is RSD?
Yeah.
The amount of people that still, and admittedly, in our position, this is kind of our thing, our niche, right? This is our playground. So we get a lot of it. Mm-hmm. We understand a lot of it. To us, we take it for granted, right?
I was just having this conversation. I love that you bring this up. Yeah.
But for most of us, we take it for granted. We know what it's like, right? We know what it is, what causes it, and ways that help us. But there are so many people that just the other day, what is RSD, right? And people were like, oh, how come you're talking about this again? Because people still don't fucking know.
They have no clue.
Because some people still don't understand it. I will talk about it. People who ask me, how do you get diagnosed? I've been asked that. Fuck, that has got to be my number one question.
Sure.
Where can I go? What can I do? What are the steps I can take to get it to look into a diagnosis? I have made a video about that 5, 6, 7 times. And every time I do it, I will open with, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about it again.
Yeah.
Fuck it. I will talk about it again until the end of time. If that's what you want to know.
Very important.
If you didn't see my one on it, I will absolutely talk about it. Yes. RSD. I've done, 3 or 4 videos.
I love that you bring up RSD because I don't know if you remember, you've actually made an RSD video for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, can somebody talk to me about RSD and exactly what it is? Because I couldn't wrap my head around it.
I remember that, actually. Yeah, I actually have it. One of my gifts in the Discord is from that video. You're like, hey, I got a question for ADHD everything, and I go, yellow.
Yep.
I've got that as a gift.
That's exactly what it is, right? Because I didn't know. And you were a person that was out here talking about it that I could relate to, right? And you're exactly right. And I always say that there's a massive underrepresented group in our community, and it's the undiagnosed people, right? Because they have no idea, right? And the more that we can think about them and try to engage them and try to and you're exactly right, just break it down to the most simplest forms, because that's the stuff that's going to get into the mainstream, right? Mm-hmm. When people start talking about RSD, in a mainstream way that's outside of our community, that's when it helps, right? Because then we don't have to go around explaining it to everybody. People know, people understand it, and that's the kind of stuff that we're building towards, is that level of understanding, right? And I think that's one thing that you're terrific at, and I love that you keep hammering it home. And one thing I'm terrible about is that exact thing where you're hitting the fundamentals, you're hitting the basics, you're teaching it over and over, no matter how repetitive. incredible, dude. Like, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. 1, 2. Tell me about like how you keep it up. Like, how do you keep this going? Like, you talked about community, and that's great. But just fuck, dude. There's a lot of shit that you're doing. Like, how do you keep it all going? I don't know.
I don't know either, to be honest with you. And the thing is, a lot of stuff has just over the course of time has just kind of piled on, and right. It's like I started doing this, and then I started doing this, and then we added this,
Right.
and then I started this, and then it's just I don't know. Lee has continually given me props for it, and I just keep shaking my head because I think I have always tried to have something going. Right.
Do you think you're a victim of that? Like, what's next? Kind of. Like, I always say I struggle celebrating my accomplishments. Do you think like you just kind of like rolling on to the next thing?
Sort of, but in that same way that we were talking about now, not now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that far ahead.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like for now, I focus on the content creation as best I can. Right. And I mean, like, we've all got days where you're having the empty brain. I don't know what to talk about, whatever. I rely a lot on the Q&As, the comments and shit like that, and things that come up. So I kind of play off of that. But then I try and I try and work a bit on the stream as much as I can. I know I'm behind on a couple things on that, but I'm forgiving myself on that.
Hey, that's a step.
I know, right?
Right.
When we were doing the podcast, which right now we're on hiatus, just a couple of rule zeros and stuff. But I mean, I would working on that. Video stuff, I'm very proud of myself for this. I relinquished control of my video editing. Schust does my video editing because he asked me if he could do it because it's something he really enjoys, right? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Take this and see what you can make out of it. And I enjoyed what he did with it, and I'm like, fuck it, keep doing it, right? He's like, yeah, I'll keep doing it. Fucking it takes one thing off my plate, right? But because I come from like a graphic design, animation, video editing, all that stuff background, that's one of those things where it's like, I know how to do this, and part of my brain is kicking my ass.
How'd you let that go?
You know how to do this. How do you let that go, right? You know how to do this. You can do this. How dare you let somebody else do this, right? So that for me was like a shut up, stop that, right? So I let shoes. I say
that's massive. I don't. Neurotypical people probably won't understand what that level of control, like letting go of that, because one, this is your brand, right? This is your you started it, like you said, just like from nothing. You've built it into like this massive thing that's super impressive. But like, where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, but like letting go of that to somebody else, especially when, one, you've done it all yourself all the time. I want to ask, did he reach out? Because I think you said he reached out. Or did you ask for help? Because I think that's an interesting kind of dynamic in that.
I think more accurately was he had noticed that I was bogging myself down. He can feel free to correct me. Sounds like shoes. Yeah, it totally is. As far as I remember it, I think he noticed that I had a shit ton of stuff going on, and he reached out to ask if he could do this to kind of lighten the load. And for me, it was like that internal struggle of, you know how to do this, how dare you relinquish control?
Why would I pay a plumber when I can jackhammer out a floor myself, right?
Yeah, why not? Right? Because 60 an hour
is fuck that, right?
But I mean, I looked over the broad spectrum of all of the shit I had on the go, and I'm like, fuck it, have at it, do a run, show me what you can do, kind of thing, right? And I loved what he did with it because, as he puts, we're the same person. So, of course, I was gonna love what he did with it, right? So, and then from there, it's just like anytime I do a stream and I do a recording, we have a Dropbox. It's his Dropbox or his Google, whatever, and I just upload them there, and then he just kind of picks and pulls shit apart for. He does that, he enjoys doing that in his spare time. So it's like awesome. I am never going to. I appreciate that so much.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is there's like, I don't want to take anything away from Shoes, but there's a million Shoes in our community. Like, everybody's willing to step in and like, contribute what they can. Like, that's the amazing thing is, and it's not about, like, I know Shoes, I talked to Shoes last week. it's not about like his time. He doesn't think about it like that. He thinks about how am I helping this community? Like how am I impacting?
Exactly.
How does this help other people that I was in that same situation? You know,
I
and
tried to explain that to my wife because she couldn't understand. She's like, "Why is he doing that?" I'm like, "He's doing it for the community."
right,
Well,
it's
why?
an act of service, right?
Like
Like that's my
every
love language is that act of service, and
yeah,
I don't have shoes here, and maybe I do, but I'm pretty sure
yeah,
he would probably agree with the same thing. Like that's how you show people you care. That's how you contribute. Is just do what you can, try
yeah,
to help where you can. It doesn't matter like if you're the face of the video or if it's just that information getting out to the people that need that information. And that's what I love so much about Shoost and about this community in general. And that's what I was talking about before when we share information like that. It's
Well,
for
and
everyone.
every time he does, and sends me an edit, and then I do the audio, and I am fucking super stickler about the audio,
I'm
right? So
sure.
he and I have the agreement, right? Like I do the audio, he'll do. But yeah, so he'll send it to me. I'll put the audio in, and then I'll upload it. And in every one, and the first time I did that, he's like, "You didn't need to do that." In every one, I will always put video edited by Schuster McGee, right? Because I feel like he deserves a
Yeah,
recognition for that, right? It wasn't me who did this. Yes, it was me talking. I could have edited this, but I didn't.
right.
I didn't do it. He deserves a recognition for that, right? For the amount of work
Yeah.
that he does for our community as a whole.
That's the thing,
I
yeah.
can't,
And it's
fuck,
all
man. Yeah,
unrecognized. Nobody knows him. Like,
I think he prefers to be dead behind
yeah,
the scenes.
exactly, exactly.
But yeah, no, I put that on there. He's like, "You didn't need to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did. Credit where it's due. Absolutely.
right,
Right. I have no problem handing credit out where it's due. I didn't
right.
do all that. You did all that." So
Well, and that's because you're a part of this community, right? Like that's how we go. I mean, we keep kind of leveling on this.
that's the thing. I am just a part of the
Yeah,
community. Yes, I'm the up here in Canada. We have the Queen is on the $20 bill, so that's where for us, I'm the face on the money. Right? I'm the Queen. It's my little joke, but
I love.
that's literally it. I'm the face on the money.
Right,
That is it. I'm just the face. I am no different. I'm no more or less important in my mind than anybody else in our community,
right.
right? The mods, the work that they do, I will continue to praise them until the end of time because of the work that they do.
Oh yeah,
Yes, they are putting in part of what my vision for the community is, or Lee's vision, or Patrick's vision. They're the ones who help to bring that to life and keep that going, but they are the ones who do all the work. So again, and Shoost and Nate being the station managers, they're the ones who make sure that it's all getting done.
right.
I will praise them until the end of fucking time.
Amen.
They're
Oh,
amazing.
absolutely.
I am just the face. I'm just a member of the community.
I love it. Well,
Big
I
ass community.
I'm looking at the time. We've already hit 2 hours. This show just it goes by quick, right? So I've got to go check on my kid and make sure he's doing okay. Before we go, I want to make sure. Is there anything you want to talk about before we leave? Any kind of topics you want to touch on? Any messages you want to deliver here? Not that you don't have your own
Messages.
platform you can
This
do that on.
this community is awesome, and the fact that you are a part of it, and the fact that you are somebody who has really broken out in it. I think the stuff that you do is amazing
Thank you.
because all of your stuff. It's funny watching your videos and just like the random spontaneous whatever
Yeah.
discussions over this thing, goofy shit. Here's my insight on this, right? The stuff that you put out is hilarious. I love your stuff
Thank
so
you.
much because so many people can relate to just the silly ass thoughts that you have in your head,
Right.
or your simple gripes about whatever,
Right.
or a quick video about your kid or
Right.
whatever.
Well, that's what
So
it
the
is.
amount that
It's
you have done along is
transparency, right?
amazing.
Like you talk about it. We're trying to do what we can, right? And that's what I can do. I can show people what ADHD looks like for me, right?
Hmm.
Like,
But
and
that's the
it's
thing, is we're showing what it looks like for us
yeah, yeah,
individually,
yeah,
right? I will never ever ever say that my word is any authority.
nope,
It is my experience. I am sharing with you my experience and the scientific information behind it
Right.
that not everybody can relate to, but a good majority of us can because it's a spectrum. We
Yep.
all present different.
Absolutely. Thank
But
you
yeah,
so much for
there's
coming
my
on.
plug. You're amazing, and
Thank you.
I'm happy to be
I'm
here. I
blushing.
fucking
I'm not used to having to sit here and just take praise like this. If you can't tell, it's making me uncomfortable.
welcome to my world.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well,
get
Spaz, thank you again for one, that first video that I came across, that very first introduction. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I remember the bald head. That's what sticks out the most. No, but so no, thank you, because everything we're talking about, trying to make that connection, that's exactly what you did for me. I need you to know that, and I know I've told you before, you're not going to ever know the impact that you've made, the number of people's lives that you've impacted, right? Because for just me, I've had over 60 people reach out and tell me that they were the reason why they sought help to either get diagnosed or just for their mental health in general.
Yep.
And
hear
you
the
are
like,
the
I
reason
have
that I am doing this. So it's like a weird pyramid scheme where we're just getting fucking everybody diagnosed. You know what I mean? You're never going to understand the impact
That's what people
that
say.
you have. And so I want to make sure I take the
that's a
time
blessing
to
in
let you
itself.
know that for me, you've changed my life from what you're doing. I will never be able to pay it back, but I will always be here
I
trying.
never expected.
Um, I will
But I
always
appreciate
be
that. It's my
grateful.
honor.
You'll never know the impact that you have on people, but you're saving lives. We've both personally had people reach out saying that we are the reasons why they didn't in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
The impact that you have on people will never be known, Spaz. But I want you to know that the impact you've had on my life, I'll never be able to pay back. I'll forever be grateful for you.
I'm glad.
So please keep doing what you're doing.
I would never expect it. I would never expect it paid back, but I'm glad. If something that I have said or done can resonate with somebody in a positive way, and it's funny you bring that up. There was talked about this with Lobau last week. That there was somebody who reached out to me and did a video and said that, you know, I had saved their life. Literally, I was the reason they did not, as you pointed out. I was the reason they didn't end their life. That impact alone was so powerful and it hit so hard. But you're right. There are a lot of people that have told me that you'll never know the impact that you've had on my life, right? And you're right. I won't. There are so many people that won't reach out or don't,
Right.
that I won't know that impact. But I don't need to know that impact, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that I can impact. And I think that's why I take it so seriously and why I fight so hard against the misinformation.
Yeah.
Because people are going to be impacted by this stuff. They need to
Exactly.
be impacted by the right stuff, not the wrong stuff. And yeah, it's a lot to take in, man. It really is.
It is.
Like, you know that feeling. You said it yourself. You've had people reach out to you and tell you that, like, how do you feel when that happens, man?
Right.
I feel probably the same way.
Well,
It's
yeah.
like,
There's no way, like, and so that's why I'm approaching it from both sides, right? I think I'm in a unique position here where I've been on both sides of the fence, especially with you, right? Where I started out as that person who needed the information, and now we've developed into just being friends, which is its own thing in its own right? Like, it still blows my mind, like because the way I
love it.
see this is it's like TV, right? Like, this is modern day TV, and I get to talk with all of my favorite TV show stars, like, you know, like, it's cool. I love it.
But yet we're just sitting here chatting as friends. That's
Right,
the thing, right?
right, and it's
For us, it's just like a fucking conversation.
Right. It's been a wild year. It's been a wild 2 years for you. I can't wait to see what the next year brings, and the number of people we can reach and find, and the community we can keep building together, and all the cool shit we get to do. Like, we do a lot of cool shit. Like, like, as one of the like, it's hard to do content creation sometimes, But sometimes we get to do some of the coolest shit out there and meet some of the nicest people. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything, to be honest with you.
Me either.
But
I love it.
I think this would be a great spot to end the show. I'm going to stop the broadcast right now. Thank you all for joining. You can find Spaz at ADHD Everything on all the platforms. He's got them all covered. His OnlyFans, though, is not ADHD Everything. Spaz, what is that one again?
That one's only squirrels.
Okay, yeah. Where you can get your nuts. I like it.
That's right. Just me and my little buddy here.
All right, with that, I'm Spencer. Catch me next week. We'll have another episode and we'll have a lot of fun. Thanks again.